We're going to factor this trinomial here. And if you notice, it's a little bit different than the ones you've probably seen. It has an x to the fourth and then an x squared. And what we're going to do is we're going to use U-substitution. So if you're familiar with this pattern, what you are probably used to seeing looks like this. Okay, so instead of 3x to the fourth minus 4x squared minus 20, you're probably used to seeing 3x squared minus 4x minus 20. And you should be able to factor that by the time you get to a problem like this. And however you do it, whether it's AC method or trial and error, the first two terms have to give you 3x. The last two have to give you 20. Could be 1 and 20 or 2 and 10 or 4 and 5. In this case, it's 10 and 2. You get your signs correct. And then this is the factorization of the trinomial that's in red. But we don't have the one that's in red. So what we're going to do is we are going to make it look like what we know and what we're familiar with. So let me get this, let me copy this, copy, and I'll put it right here. So here's the original. You can just kind of, for a second, just pretend that that didn't exist. And what I want to do is I want to write it down the way that I'm used to. We always use x in algebra, and sometimes we use y. Sometimes they will do a y substitution. But in this case, we're going to use the letter u. And I'm not sure why. Maybe if you know, you can comment on this video. But what we're used to seeing would be this. 3u squared minus 4u minus 20. And now, in the purple, this is something that we know how to factor. Okay, so this is a 3u and a 1u gives me that u squared. We do have a 10 and a 2 that gives me 20. The outer and the inner will now give me the minus 4u. Okay, so this is the correct factorization of this trinomial. And what did we do to get there? Well, we noticed that instead of x squared, we used the letter u. And if u is x squared, if I square the u, I will have to take the x squared, square that, and that, if you know the power rule of exponents, that's x to the fourth. So u squared is x to the fourth, and that's exactly what we have here. X to the fourth is u squared, and then x squared is u. So once we factor, we're borrowing this u so that we can factor. You have to go back. Okay, we can't give our answers in terms of u because they don't even know what u is. They gave us x. So what we're going to do is we are going to take this u, and what are we going to put instead of u? We're going to put x squared. So this is 3x squared minus 10 times x squared plus 2. Okay, and this is the answer. This is the factored form. Now, if you're just familiar, if you're so familiar with this pattern that you can just go to the factors, you might realize that your first two terms will be, to get 3x to the fourth would have to be 3x squared and 1x squared. Your last two will have to multiply to give you that 20. That's 10 and 2, and then the minus and the plus. So you will end up getting the same thing. And then, of course, the outer plus the inner 2 will give you your minus 4x squared. So if you realize that you can just take the square root of this, which is x squared, you might be able to go straight to the factors once you recognize the pattern. But this is the U-substitution over here in the purple, and you will probably see a type of substitution like this again in calculus. All right.